Okay, I'm going to introduce Robin Young. She's our next speaker. Her topic is Where's the Beef? Robin Young grew up on a mixed farm in Manitoba, and her passion for food and love of science drove her to pursue a career in agriculture and food. Robin is the Chief Operating Officer, General Manager of the Food Development Centre in Portage-la Prairie. She is excited about the growth and success of Manitoba's agri-food sector, and she has a wide range of knowledge and experience in the food industry, having worked in areas of quality assurance, technical marketing, production, environmental management, and continuous improvement prior to joining Manitoba Agriculture in 2007. Please be sure that your phones are shut off or put on vibrate. And if you have a call, please take it out to the hall. So would you please help me welcome Robin Young.
Thank you. We're good to go. We're just getting a pointer ready to go. Sorry about the delay. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, just make sure this works. Okay, hello. Thank you for coming to my session. I named it Where's the Beef just to get you here. It's a little bit controversial. I'm going to talk to you today about the opportunities in the growing protein market. Hopefully you've seen or heard yesterday that the province of Manitoba and the Department of Ag announced a new protein strategy looking at livestock protein but also animal-based protein. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why we're so concerned and so interested in that protein market. I also want to point out that this picture right here is the Food Development Centre in Portage-la Prairie. We're part of the Department of Agriculture and the Government of Manitoba, and our mandate is to work with entrepreneurs, startups, farmers, commodity groups, but multinationals as well, to take new products to market. We hope to use Manitoba inputs, add value, and export them, keeping jobs and processing in Manitoba. The food industry is important to Manitoba. I want to tell you a little bit about this. You've probably read some stats in the paper about the size of the ag sector. Ag Days is doing a really good job covering that. And the food and beverage portion of that is $4.7 billion, and it represents 24% of Manitoba's total manufacturing revenue. It employs 13,000 Manitobans. And at the pilot plant at FDC, we have a facility. If you had a company, you would come do your production there, and anything produced in our plant can go anywhere across the globe. The products produced last year valued over $1.2 million in the retail market. And I've got a picture here of the top three, kind of the big guys in the food industry in Manitoba: French fries or potatoes, pork, we have a big bacon plant in Winnipeg, and canola. But the diversity within the sector is changing all the time, and we're adding new products and new commodities, new finished products, new ingredients. There's lots going on. It's very dynamic. We're definitely an exporting province, which you probably know, but I don't know if you would know that we export food to over 77 countries. 96% of the total exports go into 5 markets, of course, with the one major being to the south of us. But we've diversified away from that into Japan, Mexico, China, and the Philippines. And exports in 2015 were valued at over $2 billion. The goal, of course, is to grow that. And so part of the protein strategy is to think about how do we add more value so that we are not shipping commodities, but we're shipping ingredients or finished foods. So we're talking a lot about protein. So what is the market? The market size is estimated to be $26 billion by next year and continuing to grow. It's been showing a growth rate of over 7% from 2016 and projected to continue to 2025. And part of that global demand is for meat, growing at 3% a year. The claim, excellent source of protein, so when you look at a finished product at the retail store and it would say excellent source of protein on it, the use of that claim has grown by 14% to over $4 billion of the retail market as of August 2017. And there's projections that plant-based protein will make up a third of the world protein market by 2050. But we have to remember, when we're talking about plant-based proteins and this whole world market, that includes things like personal care, shampoo, your body washes, not just the food part of it. So there's products being marketed to men as a post-workout body wash that if you put protein on your body, maybe that will add to your muscle mass. And that's eating up a portion of the plant-based protein ingredients that are going into products. We're also talking about protein because we know we have a growing global population. We're set to add 2 billion people by 2050. And how are we going to feed them, never mind meet their protein requirements? So that's part of the underlying reason for the conversation. The other part is looking at demographics and the population across Canada, across the globe, and I'm going to focus on Canada. So currently we've got millennials, Generation X, boomers, and pre-boomers making up the majority of the market. And when you look at millennials and boomers, they're each taking up 20% of the market. But when you get down to households, millennials are still only 19%, partly because some of them are living at home. Their parents aren't always keen on that. And 38% of the boomers, or boomers rather, make up 38%, almost 40% of households. So the individual is important, but when you hit the grocery store, often you're buying for your whole household. So boomers are purchasing for their millennial kids still at home. So that's an important thing that we look at in the food industry to see who's buying what, who are these consumers we're talking about that are asking for all this protein. And this is just a projection of the population, so we can see the yellow line, millennials are going to carry on for a long time. Right now, we consider them the next generation influencer shoppers. So they have a smartphone, they're on social media, they know what's going on. And I've got Veruca Salt from Willy Wonka. You might remember her. She didn't want it tomorrow, she wanted it now. And that is kind of generalizing this population group, but it summarizes them a little bit in terms of how they approach the consumer goods market. So you'd think they're very opposite ends of the spectrum, the baby boomers and the millennials. And aging boomers and even aging Gen Xers have smaller appetites, which is changing what they look for in meals and meal preparation. Taste buds start to dissipate. That's just a biological fact that you start to lose your tasters. So you start looking for products that still appeal to you. Dietary restrictions start being imposed by medical professionals in our lives. So we're looking for different things to reduce salt or fat. Whereas millennials haven't faced that yet. They're self-imposing dietary restrictions. They're saying, I'm going to leave out gluten or I'm leaving out whatever it might be. They tend to be adventurous in terms of eating. They're more culturally diverse. And in some cases, we're hearing that they're the generation that's not going to do as well as their parents, so they're looking for experiences rather than material goods. And food is often a way that they're experiencing the world. But when we talk about this Beyond Burger, has anyone tried a Beyond Burger? Raise of hands. A few people. I forget that I live in the world of food, and so when there's a new product in the market, I'm one of the first people to go try it. So I have tried one in Portage la Prairie of all places. This is one product where boomers and millennials cross over, and they end up driving the demand for this type of product. What it is, it's a plant-based burger patty. This one happens to be made of peas and a lot of coconut oil. So that's kind of the structure of it. And it's appealing to baby boomers, maybe if they've been told to reduce their red meat consumption, but they still want to have that fast food drive-through experience. And millennials are saying, we're not sure about the meat industry. Some of them are trying out veganism or vegetarianism, and this is a way to do so. So A&W, I don't know if you know much about them, but they were struggling, and a lot of their market were boomers. And they're trying to find a way to appeal to millennials. And so you're probably very aware of all their other marketing they've done about no hormones, and now they've got real cheese on a burger, goodness sakes. So they're trying to reinvent themselves by appealing themselves to the millennial population because it's such an up-and-coming group of the population. So some of the trends that are also driving what goes on in the food market, I pulled off this time of year Whole Foods, which is a retailer in the US. I think they just were purchased by Amazon. They put out their top 10 every January, which is kind of neat to see. So they've talked about Pacific Rim flavors, so Oceania and Asiatic flavors, shelf-stable probiotics. We've probably heard of probiotics as kind of a dairy, their way to get bacteria and healthy bacteria into your gut for gut health. And you're starting to see probiotics come onto the shelf in oatmeal, granola bars. You can take them with you easier. Fats. What is a fat? So fat, as far as I remember, when it's spelled with a PH, means that it's cool. So it's a cool fat. So I've got a picture up here of ghee. Does anybody know what ghee is, or have you ever made ghee or cooked with ghee? So it's clarified butter is all it is. You know when you melt butter for popcorn and you get the little crystals or the solids that float to the top? If you skim that off and save the rest of the butter, that's ghee. You've made fancy butter. It's traditionally used in Southeast Asian cooking, Indian cooking, but for whatever reason, butterfat is in crazy high demand. People are worried about their health, but they want butterfat. Our dairy industry is experiencing that. The butterfat, it goes at a premium. And ghee is starting to show up in value-added products. So now you can buy this Buddha bowl, oh my ghee popcorn. And I think the company is called Lesser Evil of all things. Oh my goodness. Anyways, Whole Foods, going back to this list, talks about next level hemp. Any guesses what that's about? Cannabis deregulation, hemp deregulation, cannabidiol, which goes by CBD, are the initials for that. There's lots of speculation of what's going to come up in the market, especially in Canada, because edibles will be legal this year. So we're reading the regulations and trying to figure out what types of products are going to come into the market with CBD or THC from the cannabis side. There's a few things going on in food service. It's a big trend in the US. You can go to high tea parties as ladies. They're trying to market edibles towards a female population. So we'll see where that takes us. Faux meat snacks are starting to become, people want a break from beef jerky, so they're looking for alternatives. Trailblazing frozen treats. When I read this one, I thought, what the heck does that mean? It's looking at the dairy ice creams. We've seen them shift to soy and coconut-based. They're trying to add more protein. So you're going to see pulse-based ice creams coming out, hummus-based frozen treats. Avocado is really popular, and some with savory flavors. So you might get a cheese popsicle. I'm not sure if that appeals, but we'll see. Remember, these trends often start in the western side of North America and move inward, so we're a little bit late to the game on trends sometimes in Manitoba. Marine munchies beyond seaweed, so you can buy those little packs of seaweed crackers. There's lots of discussion about the ocean and ocean health, but people are really aware that omegas are still very good for you and they want to eat fish. So I saw some snacks coming out that are basically salmon skin to chew on. I typically buy those for my dog, so I'm not sure that I see them moving into the human aisle, but we'll see if Whole Foods' prediction is correct or not. And snack time upgraded, that relates to that as well, that we're snacking a lot. We want portable foods and just small bites, but we want them to be adult. So there's things like wine-flavored potato chips coming on the market, more artisanal cheeses, that kind of thing. So you might pack a snacky lunch for your grade 2 kid that's off to school, but you want something more adult for yourself. And purchases that empower, and what they mean by that is essentially traceability in the company. People are interested in corporate social responsibility, so understanding what a company is about. Other more general trends that we see in the market is clean label. So we've seen that with pizza labels, trying to just, the crust is just flour and water, trying to use plain language. There's that commercial that talks about if you can't spell it, it shouldn't be in your food. As a food scientist, I'm not convinced that that's the way to go, but there definitely is a push for consumers to understand what's in their food, and that's a good thing. They're wanting to know more. Wellness is important. Flexitarian, have you heard that term before? So flexitarian is defined as someone who eats meat, but every so often they leave it out of their diet and they replace it with plant-based, either proteins, lentils, chickpeas, that kind of thing. There's still some speculation whether that's just something that people self-report as kind of aspirational. I aspire to eat less meat, but I'm maybe not showing up at the grocery store and making those purchase decisions. So we'll see where the market takes us. And then the coolest word on here, snackification. Snackification, or snackified eating. So that is this mini meal, this approach to taking things with you on the go. And I've got a slide on this next just about the trend with snacking. Weight management is still important, sustainability, whatever that means to you. Food waste, we've seen the campaigns for the ugly vegetables, someone please eat the crooked carrot. Food safety, traceability, brain health. And I've got it connected to muscle maintenance because the brain is kind of recently been identified as part of our muscle, and we know that we lose muscle mass as we age, so people are looking at muscle maintenance related to brain health and aging well. Now, do you guys recognize this brand, Nutrigrain? Do you remember, it's still a bar, I'm sure it's still in the market, I haven't had a chance to check, but they're like an oatmeal bar with fruit filling. Well, apparently it's become too hard to chew those bars, and they're not convenient enough. So now Nutri-Grain has launched these protein squeezers, which I don't know what that is, banana and honey smash. So essentially simple ingredients. It's got a protein claim on the front of it, and I guess parents were tucking these pouches in with their kids for school or feeding their toddlers and said, where are my pouches? So pouches have moved to the adult section. I wonder if we're going to regret as we age that we didn't chew more. I think of that every morning when I have a smoothie, that, well, I regret that I'm going to eventually have to eat out of a straw. And I should be chewing while I can. So back to snackification. We used to eat around kind of 3 square meals, right? Breakfast, lunch, and supper, or breakfast, dinner, however you call it. It's changed. 50% of eating occasions are now snacks. That's huge. 33% of morning snacks are consumed away from home, so probably in the car or in transport. 26% of afternoon snacks are consumed away from home. So we're not eating at home, we're not eating at the dinner table. It changes how food producers and food processors need to approach the market. If you have a packaged good product line, you probably need to have a snack line to be keeping up with this trend. The interesting connection here to protein is that on average, 31% average annual growth of snack launches had either a high source of protein or a source of protein claim on them. So people want to get protein in small bites on the go. Another interesting shift in our population is the growth of 1 to 2 person households. Boomers are driving this for sure. So since the 60s to 2006, we've seen it approach 60%. I think I heard a stat that Winnipeg has 40 to 45% 1 to 2 person households. So that changes what you need and how you shop. We're seeing this globally. And this is a retailer, Albert Heijn, is in the Netherlands. They've launched a 1-a-day egg pack. So 7 eggs. Cute packaging. I wouldn't have thought of that. And they're experiencing the same thing. 40% of their Northern European cities are 1 person. We haven't quite approached that yet. I think you can still get 6 eggs, but we're typically buying a dozen or more. But the Canadian egg farmers have launched this cute campaign called Weekday Eggs to get people to think about them as easy, fast, portable, as opposed to weekend eggs where you take time and put hollandaise sauce on top of everything. So there's an approach there to kind of promote that protein. So the topic, where's the beef? What I want to talk to you next about, I'm going to do my best to explain a little bit about plant-based protein, what they are, and that they're not really solved yet. There's a lot of talk about them and a lot of demand for them, but we're doing a lot of work on innovation. So the protein strategy for the department talked about the growth of the livestock herd and supplying our pork processors with enough hogs. There's talk about the sheep herd. And then there's a little bit about plant extracts and innovation in protein extracts. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that is. Currently, the plant-based protein market structure, the ingredients available to the industry is made up of soy. 77% is soy ingredients. So that breaks down into some isolates and concentrates. So that just means the level of protein in those ingredients. As you get to an isolate, there's a higher level of protein. Wheat protein makes up 22%. And then we drop all the way over here, where pea is 0.2% of the ingredient market. And others include rice, potato, canola, chia. I would add hemp to this list from the prairies, flax, barley, oats, you name it. Every commodity we grow has protein. Whether it has enough to justify getting it out, with the cost of getting it out, if you can use the co-products. So I'll explain a little bit about that. So don't get hung up. I'm not going to try to teach you about canola extraction because I don't do it. But we use this approach at the Food Development Center to look at commodities and figure out what component parts are important, whether we're using it as a whole grain or a whole commodity, or we're going to break it into parts, or fractionate it or extract it. So a canola seed starts here, and we know we have a crushing industry in Canada, so it gets pressed, extracted into crude oil, refined into cooking oil. There's a good market for that fat and that oil. Canola oil sells itself. It's a clean product. People like it. It goes globally. So the industry and the infrastructure has been focused on canola oil, breeding canola to get the fat levels up so that there's enough fat to justify crushing. And the interventions and innovations in processing have been around increasing that yield of oil. The meal has always occurred. It's always a byproduct. It's made up of the fiber left over from the hull and the seed. Notice I've called it co-products. So byproducts, we're now calling them co-products, thinking that they have a market and a value. We're trying to add that value. I've heard them called plus products by companies. So typically, the meal protein has gone to livestock feed, which is a good market. I read a stat that 2 out of 3 dairy cattle in California eat Canadian canola meal. That's a good stat for us and a good market. However, canola protein, with the demand in the human market, has been approved for human consumption. So now we're doing some investigation into what is in that protein and how does it work. Can I put it into a bar or a cookie or a beverage to get that added protein? When you take protein out of a product, any kind of seed or grain, and you mill it, you start with flour. So this is meal, the fat's removed. We get this flour over here at 50 to 70% protein, which sounds pretty good, but it's really bulky. It's still got all that extra fiber in there that you don't really want when you're formulating with it as a food processor. So we've kind of tried to move up the value chain, remove some of that fiber and hull, and get rid of it. And that means usually putting the mixture into liquid, so water. Used to be solvents, but we're moving away from that just with consumers aren't super keen on solvents, and neither are the processors. So we're using water. You might change the pH, so the acidity, how acidic or basic it is, the temperature. So it's a bit of chemistry. And then you can get 71 to 85% protein out of here. Now you have a new byproduct over here that's the fiber. So you figure out if there's a market for that or if it's truly a waste product. And we can do one other extraction and go all the way to an isolate of over 85%, which gives you higher concentration of protein. So when you go to put it in a finished product, you don't have to put as much. So a consumer doesn't have to eat a cookie the size of their head. They can eat a regular size cookie and get that protein. But it's not solved even when you do that. We have to then work with the protein and figure out how does it work in a function. Is it good in what type of structure? Is it good for a beverage? Is it soluble? Or is it going to be really gritty and add to problems in that beverage, so we're going to put it into something else like bread or baked goods? And we also talk about the quality of protein. That's something else that isn't just nice to have. It's actually a definition by the FAO of the World Health Organization, and it's determined by the essential amino acid composition. So we've heard of lysine and those from way back in biochemistry or high school. Amino acid composition, though, doesn't mean whether a protein is good or not. You still have to put it through a human digestive system to find out if it's digestible and if it's bioavailable to that body. This takes, we don't do this at the Food Center, by the way. This is where we partner with the University of Manitoba. So any new ingredient we create from a commodity goes for analysis to figure out what is the protein quality. Because until you have that assessed, you can't use the ingredient. Health Canada would say it's novel, it's not met the regulatory requirements. And this takes between 2 and 3 months to do the trial, and then you have a document that you talk to Health Canada about your product. So you can see I'm trying to just weave the story that plant-based proteins are still very much, they're very innovative, but they still have a lot of work to do around what our commodities provide for protein. There's a lot of opportunity on the prairies. We grow a lot of things that have this opportunity, but it's going to take some innovation to get there. Back to peas. You've probably heard about the investment in pea processing in Manitoba. We're going to have the world's largest pea facility in Portage la Prairie. And why? When I went back to that slide, it was 0.2% of the current ingredients available to the market. Well, there's a lot of interest in peas. They have less of an allergen standpoint than soy. They're starting to function a little bit better. Where we used to say there was a beanie flavor, we now have the science to get the flavor out, so we can give you the starch and the fiber and the protein. The number of new product launches between 2013 and December 2017, so in a 4-year period, was over 2,000. Globally, you'll see the majority in Europe, but quite a few in North America as well. And in Canada, we had 167. So you can see why there's interest in growing the pea acres and growing pea processing capacity on the prairies, because there's a market that wants these products. I can't emphasize enough that alternative proteins present challenges to food processing companies. It's going to be a very difficult proposition to explain or try to convince a food processor who's using soy that they should leave soy. Soy is repeatable, it's dependable, they know how it functions, they understand what it does in their food matrices. These new novel proteins are a bit of a risk for them. So that's where we're going to do the work on the nutritional and commercialization piece, figuring out the cost. Is there enough acreage, availability, processing capacity to keep repeatably providing these ingredients? But they still present challenges of formulation. So this cookie at the bottom is called the complete cookie. Apologies that it's a bit blurry. There's 16 grams of protein in it from pea isolates, and they've kind of used chocolate to their advantage. When you add extra protein to a baked good, it goes very dark. I had the opportunity yesterday to have some pierogi made with lentil flour that tasted lovely. They were gluten-free. The texture was okay, but they were kind of dark brown, and that's one of the hindrances of adding protein to goods. It also changes the texture, the flavor, though we're getting better at taking the flavor out of things. So that's some of the challenges up against plant-based proteins. So even once we get canola protein kind of sorted, we then have to figure out what products it goes best into. It's doable, it's just going to take a bit of time. And some of the resulting products you see in the market. I liked this image here because it speaks to how consumers don't want to drink this big bottle to get 20 grams of protein. They want it in this tiny little snapshot of a whey shot. And that's why we're going after isolates and concentrates to get them really dense protein. This Catelli protein pasta is very cool. The source of protein here is fava bean, which is an excellent opportunity, again, for the prairies. Fava bean is huge. It's growing in popularity. Europe is all about fava bean, so what a neat opportunity for Canada to supply the world with a really trusted source of fava bean protein. And this just shows you an example of how companies that are a bit challenged in this market, where people and consumers are hearing loud and clear to reduce their sugar content. Juice got pulled out of the food guide. They want to have their Mars bar still, but if you see 19 grams of protein on the front, you can tolerate a little bit of grittiness maybe, and you feel like you're having an indulgence that's got that protein. So the plant-based market is kind of getting kind of interesting to watch, to see what's going on. Big animal companies are seeing where consumers are going, and they want to be there right alongside them. They're kind of hedging their bets, let's say. So Maple Leaf has made some acquisitions. They've bought Light Life Foods and Field Roast Grains. Tyson has an investment in Beyond Meat, which is the company responsible for the Beyond Burger. I think they started at 5%, and I've heard they've increased their investment. Nestle has bought Sweet Earth. On the dairy side, Danone, typical conventional dairy, has bought White Wave, which is the company responsible for products like Silk in the market, the soy-based products. I noticed they make International Delight, those coffee flavoring liquids. And Otsuka is a Japanese pharmaceutical company. They bought Canadian-based Daiya, which is a dairy-free cheese company. But it's not all going that meat companies and dairy are looking to buy plant-based. We see Hershey's up here bought Crave beef jerky. That's not plant-based, that's beef, real beef jerky. So they were probably looking at the market, seeing where consumers are trying to get off of sugar, and wanted to make sure they could capture those consumers as well. So they're going to offer them a protein snack. And I've got Saputo up here because there is talk that they're looking to buy into this market in some way. It's a really interesting time in the food world. People coming up with new ideas and innovations are not foodies, they're not farmers, they don't have food science degrees. They're often accountants or marketing people that see the opportunity that the market is growing really fast. There's a way to disrupt the market by putting something out that's really innovative, and you might get purchased by one of these companies in a few years. So back to meat a little bit. I want to talk about a couple demographic changes that, or changes in the population that are driving the demand for meat and that 3% growth globally. So we see a change in the face of Canada and our ethnic diversity, and newcomers are coming and they're looking for products that they're used to having at home and they can't find in our market. We have one client at the Food Development Center that is vertically integrated. They grow hibiscus flowers in Africa, but they transport them here to be processed, and they make a beverage and a tea out of them. So kind of the opposite. Usually we ship commodities for processing, they're bringing it in. So that's kind of neat. And they're looking at different types of meat. So of course I have a goat. And again, back to the protein strategy of the province, looking at growing the sheep herd because there's a real opportunity in that market. We know there's a growing middle class still emerging in China and countries like India as well. And as people move up the income level, they want to add meat to their diet. So we start with staple foods, and we end up with meat, packaged foods, and luxury foods. It's kind of like a Maslow's hierarchy of needs for the food chain. And so that's where we're seeing that drive for increased meat in diets. Has anybody heard of this company called Epic? I've been following them for a little while. They're kind of a neat one. They started out in about 2013, I think. Two entrepreneurs. I think they're husband and wife now. They were athletes, long-distance runners. They were trying to adopt a vegan or vegetarian lifestyle, and they ran into some major health concerns. And the only thing that seemed to be a solution was to start adding in animal protein. So they wanted to do that in a way that was sustainable and kind of help them live their values. So they started this company called Epic. I first saw the bars in Whole Foods, and they're beautiful. So there's a turkey one, there's a Hereford cow, there's a lamb, I think, on another one, and they've kind of grown from there. They're all about transparency, traceability. They want to tell their customers what they're doing and where their products are coming from, while trying to embrace this nose-to-tail notion. So they've got bone broth, and they've got all the fats affiliated with the mammals and livestock that they're using. So they have a full product line extension. Now, they were purchased in 2015 by General Mills. They'd been in the market less than 3 years, and General Mills, the woman in Texas who runs the company, was noticing that she was sending an order every day to this Minneapolis office, and so she figured out it was General Mills, and she thought, ooh, their product developers are buying our product to knock it off. They're trying to copy it. So she kept canceling the order. And the phone rang one day, and it was the venture capital arm of General Mills saying, no, 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 we're looking at you. We're not trying to copy you. They went silent for a couple of years, and then kind of year 3 came back and said, how about $30 million and you come into the company? So they've gone into General Mills. They're under their Annie's line of organic products, and we'll see how they do. It's difficult to be kind of nimble and innovative in those big corporates. But those big corporates realize that's how they're approaching the market and trying to capture millennial dollars, is by buying up some of these innovative millennial companies. And I copied the salmon verbiage, not because it's the best on the website, but it was the shortest that I could actually fit in a way we could actually read it. And so when you read this, epic salmon, even that's just good, just calling it epic beef, epic lamb, is 100% wild caught, line caught, in case you're not clear, from all the waters of Alaska. The salmon eat whatever is available to them in the ocean. It just sounds tranquil, doesn't it? They just wander around eating whatever they want. And typically plankton, krill, other small fish. And it's, of course, it's certified by the Marine Stewardship Council. There's a lot of adjectives in here. I've heard another speaker talk about this market area and says, basically, we want university-educated pork. Tell us more about it. It better have had a nice life. And I think that's an opportunity for all of us in this room and in the province and across the prairies and in Canada. We have really good stories. We have excellent production standards, and people like to know where their food comes from, and we have nothing to hide. So this is an interesting company to kind of see what they're doing. McDonald's, we've seen them adopt, up in this corner is this logo. I think they've committed to buying 30% CRSB certified beef. CRSB is the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. So their logo, environmentally sound, socially responsible, economically viable, your go-to forum for sustainable beef in Canada. This is a network and kind of a collaboration of various parts of the value chain across the country. So beef producers, processors, restaurants, retailers, and McDonald's has been one that's bought in quite early. Now, I was talking today with a colleague of mine at one of our leadership team in the Department of Ag about the protein strategy and our work with the livestock producers and growing the livestock herd. And one of the goals of the strategy is to drive value out of these programs. I know that they're onerous, they take a lot of documentation and paperwork, and you don't always see the value back to the farm, but you see it go to the restaurant. And that's part of the discussion we're aware of, and we'd like to try to make a difference there so that it incentivizes farmers to do this, because this is part of us keeping up our trust, our public trust with consumers. Some other really cool things I think the industry is doing for consumers, because I'm not sure we know how to cook anymore, is promoting recipes, ways to incorporate beef. And if you have a chance, this Roundup app is very good. It goes through cuts, but also kind of budget conversations with you at the grocery store. So if you're on a budget, you can buy beef and incorporate it. It'll tell you how to cook it. Is it tender or not so tender, but it's got good flavor? Do you have enough time? It's a really, really good way for consumers, if they would have this, to incorporate beef. And Think Beef is also another really cool website that's got some interesting recipes in terms of moving away from traditional beef stew and things we would think of as Canadian, but adding in that ethnic diversity and incorporating beef into those recipes. It used to be a really fun app that when you opened it, it went, yeehaw! And I planned to do that today, and now it doesn't do it, so I couldn't do it. So there, you got my little yeehaw. And this is an interesting campaign, back to McDonald's. I really like this. There's no beef. Where is the beef? There's no beef without the farmers. So they put farmers at the forefront. Again, we wish that that meant a return to the bottom line. We'll see how that goes. But it's really interesting. They've done that not only with beef, with their potatoes, with their apples. They talk a lot about where they source. So a little bit about the Food Development Center. We're located in Portage la Prairie. We're a team of food scientists, engineers, nutritionists, kind of food experts, and we work with companies of all sizes to help take product ideas to market. We work on the technical side of the business. We partner up with the Department of Agriculture on the business development side. So right when you're working on your product development, you'll get help in terms of going to trade shows, meeting up with retailers or food service to try to market your products as well. We do a lot with both animal and plant-based proteins. One of the products that's in the market that I can talk about is Jane's chicken breast nuggets. Look fairly similar to any chicken breast nugget. However, they have a pulse fiber from peas. I think it's pea fiber and pea flour in the breading, which increases the level of fiber in that product. And an added bonus is when you fry it, it doesn't uptake as much fat. And yet you can feed it to a 3-year-old, because we've done it, and they'll eat it. So you can feel better about this product. And that's where we're seeing a bit of combination of some of the plant-based with the meat. Another thing, this isn't us, but I noticed this in the market, and we're getting quite a bit of demand here too. So these are Men's Health branded, so it's cool to be healthy. They're lean pork sausages with beans in them. So to have a fiber claim, you can see on the label, there's a source of fiber or a high in protein and less fat. So you can have your sausage without all the meat, but still have that meat experience. In the 90s, this would have been Hamburger Helper, and we would have seen it as stretching your budget. Now it's a premium product, and it's stretching your health. We know that there's differences in what shoppers want in meat. So when you look at this slide, the chicken breasts are over here at lower price, and the wings are over here at a way higher price. We'd have the opposite in our market, which makes us a nice synergistic market with other countries. But we know that globally, consumers are looking for freshness and quality. So we've done a lot of work with the meat industry in Manitoba to extend shelf life of products so they can send fresh products into Singapore, into Asia, and know that they still have a good amount of time on the shelf. So just some thoughts to wrap up. The world population is definitely increasing, which is a good story for farmers, especially in Canada. We have a lot of land base, and good for exporters. It's vital to understand our food and culinary cultures of our export markets so that we know what they want. We wouldn't want to send them, all chicken breasts when we could sell that into the market as a premium. So it's important to know what's going on, and we've got supports within the department, but also we work with Global Affairs Canada and some of the trade commissioners to help us understand what's going on in export markets so we can inform companies. Consumer trends are driven by lots of things, but lots of things are converging. So the social sustainability, social responsibility, animal welfare is all kind of converging and driving the millennials towards certain things. Consumer trends are also very readily available to us in social media. We can see what's happening around the globe, and that's kind of a new advantage. It also means that you have to be kind of nimble and fast to adapt. Food safety concerns are still very much at the forefront of consumers' minds. We all went through the romaine lettuce thing. Are you buying romaine lettuce yet? It just went on and on, didn't it? And I think this week there was HelloFresh, one of those food delivery boxes, has a recall that's impacted Manitoba. There's some salmonella-contaminated chili. So people are very concerned about that. We're very fortunate in our market in our country you can trust. You can eat for very little and trust what you're getting. And our recall system tells us what to watch out for. Origin of ingredients is important. It's a legal part of a food label. It's definitely a marketing tool, especially when the product is coming out of Canada. We have a strong preference for Canadian foods in Canada, and especially I know consumers love when they find a Manitoba product on the shelf. That's even more exciting because it might have been made in your neighborhood. We also have a very strong brand internationally that we need to capitalize on. There's a lot of trust in our systems and our production. And remember that the margin is in the adjectives. They don't want to know it's pork. They want to know that that pork had a nice life, had a name, potentially. And just going back to that salmon story, that they've been out wandering the ocean, just eating whatever's available. Farmers are fashionable, and we want consumers to see Canada's pride and passion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin.
Thank you.
We have time for maybe one question. Any questions? Seeing none, we're going to move on. Thank you very much, Robin. Oh, there's one. Okay.
Okay. I knew I was going to get asked that, and I did. So I'll repeat the question. I've been asked what I think about the new Canada Food Guide, and I didn't mean to leave it out, but it launched on Tuesday, and I haven't had a chance to put it in. I took a very brief look at it, and I know there's been a lot of controversy about how they've positioned protein as a smaller portion of the plate and animal protein up against plant-based protein. I think it makes a lot of assumptions that people know how to cook and that they understand micronutrients. And I guess I'm a little bit concerned in the sense that the demographic that's trying out veganism and vegetarianism is 16 to 24-year-old young women. And they're already facing nutrient deficiencies, so having them remove a very good source of iron and B12 and that kind of thing is a bit concerning. I cheered a little about the juice, to be honest. It's all about water. But then you go into the water section of the guide, and it talks about how to make your water taste better. And it says you can add different things to water, which we do. People add lemon and limes and cucumbers and things. But they talked about basil and strawberries, a lovely combination. And I thought, well, they haven't tried to shop in Newdale, Manitoba at the grocery store getting strawberries or basil any time of the year, never mind in the winter, in an affordable and quality way. So it seems a little bit out of touch with some of our population.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Robin.
Thanks.
That was a very good presentation.
Thank you.